This is the Travel Scholar Podcast. Make the most of your time, money, miles, and points, and travel well informed. Here's your host, Nathan Romer, the Travel Scholar.
Greetings. Hey everyone. It's November 2024, and this is episode 1 of the Travel Scholar Podcast. This show will cover some travel planning, trip reports, and miles and points, and hopefully each section might give you some inspiration for your own travel adventures. Welcome and enjoy.
Let's find out what the Travel Scholar has been planning with Travel Planning Talk.
This month, the planning has been all about holiday travel. For Thanksgiving, I planned a last-minute trip to Spokane, Washington to visit some family. My goal was to keep out-of-pocket costs to a minimum. I didn't start planning this trip until about 3 weeks before departure, so cash prices for flights were more than I wanted to pay. Plus, the prospect of flying all the way across the country in economy on what are sure to be full flights didn't appeal to me. That meant searching for award availability in first class between South Florida and Spokane. Fortunately, the outbound flights were easy. I found first class on American Airlines from Miami to Spokane via DFW for 23,500 miles, and as an added bonus, the Miami to Dallas flight is on a wide-body 777. I was able to score seats in what would be a flagship first suite, were it on an international flight. The return flights were a bit more difficult, as mileage redemptions were all pegged to the max variable redemption rates. Instead, I was able to book a first-class flight on Delta for about 82,000 membership rewards points via Amex Travel, and since P2 has a business platinum card, I received 35% of those points back. So, the total net cost of the redemption was just over 53,000 points. Yes, it's a bit steeper than what I'd ideally want to pay, but considering it's one of the busiest travel days of the year in the US, it was good enough for me. The return flights are via Salt Lake City to Orlando, which is a convenient hop away from West Palm Beach via our Brightline higher speed train. And bonus, I get to spend some time in Orlando on the way home. In Spokane, I'm staying at the Davenport Grand, which is a Marriott Autograph Collection property and one of 3 Davenport branded hotels in Spokane. Apparently, the original Davenport Hotel has a bit of a storied history to the extent they made a PBS documentary about it a number of years ago. I redeemed a total of 60,000 Bonvoy points to cover a 3-night stay. On the front end of my trip, I booked the Sheraton Miami Airport Hotel, which is within walking distance of the Miami Airport train station, for 22,000 Bonvoy points. And on the tail end of my trip, I booked the Hilton Lake Buena Vista near Disney Springs, where I paid a cash rate of about $170 inclusive, and where I'll use my fourth quarter $50 Hilton credit on my American Express Hilton Surpass card. Whilst in Spokane, I'm looking forward to spending time with family, as well as some planned snow tubing at a nearby Idaho ski resort. It should be a lot of fun.
Now, it's time for a Travel Scholar Trip Report.
Speaking of the Pacific Northwest, I recently returned from a combo work and leisure trip, which included fun in Vancouver and work in Seattle. This was my first time in Vancouver, and I really enjoyed it. Upon arrival, I took the SkyTrain from the airport into downtown, and it was about a 10-minute walk to my hotel, the JW Marriott Park. This was a more hefty redemption at 107,000 Marriott Bonvoy points for a 2-night stay, but I did get a complimentary upgrade to a very nice 1-bedroom corner suite, which made me feel better about the cost. The upgrade, along with access to the executive lounge, came with my platinum status. The lounge was very nice, and even though executive lounges are becoming rare birds lately, it was one of the nicer ones I've seen in a while. They had a full breakfast buffet in the mornings, a hot buffet in the evenings, and grab-and-go snacks and drinks available throughout the day. Everything, with the exception of alcohol, was complimentary. Speaking more generally about the hotel, it was a great experience. Every team member interaction was warm and friendly. The room was spacious and had all the usual luxury amenities, including toiletries by Molton Brown, one of my favorites. The hotel shares the building with the Douglas, an autograph collection hotel, as well as the Park Casino, and it's located adjacent to Rogers Stadium. If you're going to a Canucks game, then it's a perfect location, but the lobby and casino entrance gets absolutely jammed once the game ends. I also appreciated the hotel's walking distance location to the Fanny Bay Oyster Bar, which made for a great arrival night dinner. You can't beat a wide selection of Pacific oysters available at a discount thanks to the great exchange rate that translates to about a 30% discount via the US dollar. The next day, despite typically cool and rainy weather, I ventured out to the Capilano Suspension Bridge Park, which is only about a 20 to 25 minute Uber from downtown Vancouver. This was a nice escape into the great outdoors. The park has a 450-foot-long suspension bridge that spans a river gorge, as well as a cliff walk attached to one of the gorge walls, and a treetop adventure, which is a series of small suspension bridges threaded through the tall rainforest trees. It's been a while since I've smelled the scent of the forest, and I highly recommend a visit to spend a couple of hours there. After Capilano, I took an Uber to the public market on Granville Island. Many compare this to Pike Place Market in Seattle, but I enjoyed it quite a bit more. There was a wide variety of food vendors, and I was able to enjoy lunch of fresh fish and chips and German currywurst. I know I ate 2 lunches, but I couldn't decide. Once I finished eating, I spent another hour or so exploring the market and bought some loose-leaf teas for P2. Oh, and how could I forget one of the most delicious donuts I've ever had from Lee's Donuts. Don't miss them. To get back to my hotel, I took one of the cute little False Creek ferries, which had a stop about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the JW Marriott. Once there, I decided to try my luck in the casino, had an unremarkable dinner at a nearby Vietnamese restaurant, and decided to call it a night. On the last morning of my visit to Vancouver, I decided to take a walk to explore Chinatown and grab some dim sum for breakfast. Although the food was fab, and there are apparently several good restaurants in Vancouver's Chinatown, I can't say I would recommend it overall. From Chinatown, I walked through the Gastown neighborhood. I took the opportunity to have another Lee's donut whilst watching the touristy steam clock. After that, I visited Canada Place, where the cruise ships dock, for some nice views. Then, it was time to go, so I headed back to the hotel, grabbed my bags, and walked to the SkyTrain station in Yaletown to go back to the airport. Overall, I think I managed to see and do a lot within the 2 nights I stayed in Vancouver, and I wouldn't hesitate to make another visit someday. I won't bore you with the details of the work part of my trip in Seattle, except to say that the Hilton Seattle Airport is definitely a typical airport hotel, although it was nice to be able to walk a very short distance to the SeaTac Link light rail station, and from there, the airport terminals. I also found a great happy hour in downtown Seattle, where a dozen oysters ran only $24. That, followed up with some fish and chips and chowder from Ivar's, was a great way to end a visit to the Pacific Northwest. By the way, that oyster happy hour was at the Oyster Cellar. Yummy.
Class is now in session. It's time for tips and tricks for earning and burning miles and points.
This week's miles and points tip is a quick one, but one that became very relevant and useful for my recent travels. Since I had business in Seattle, my flights to and from there were on my employer's dime. But my side trip to Vancouver was on me, and for whatever reason, flights were very pricey. Naturally, I turned to mileage redemptions to cover the cost, and I actually found an okay redemption using American Airlines Advantage miles. However, I was a bit hesitant to pull the trigger because AA miles can be valuable. I could easily get better value redeeming them elsewhere, and for me, they are also a bit harder to earn. But then I remembered the new and likely temporary avenue to redeem Amex membership rewards points for Alaska miles via Hawaiian. I have plenty of membership rewards points. So I checked redemptions via Alaska Airlines mileage plan instead, and to my pleasant surprise, I found flights for far fewer Alaska miles than I would have spent via American, and from a points currency that's far more plentiful for me at the minute. What are the key takeaways here? Be sure to check multiple points currencies to find the best value redemption, and more specifically, it's worth comparing Alaska against American. This also illustrates how different programs within an alliance can often have different pricing for awards. Finally, when deciding which points or miles to redeem, consider other factors besides cents per point or mile, such as your overall balances in each program, or how easy or difficult it is to earn in one particular program over another. In my example, sure, Amex membership rewards might generally be considered more valuable than American Airlines miles, but Amex welcome bonuses are plentiful, whereas I'm more limited in terms of the rate at which I can earn American Airlines miles. I hope that gives you some additional food for thought for the next time you're considering a redemption. Well, that's a wrap on the first episode of the Travel Scholar podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to share any feedback with me. Until next time, travel well informed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Travel Scholar podcast. You can find the Travel Scholar online at travelscholar.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/travelscholar, at Travel Scholar on YouTube, and at Travel Scholar 86 on Instagram and X. Nathan Romer is a full-service travel advisor. If you need help booking your next holiday or for feedback on this episode, then please email nathan@travelscholar.com. To support this podcast, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you. And wherever you go, travel well informed.